After the cliffhanger of Saitama facing off against Headphone Man, Forte, we are now gearing up for the fight that a lot of webcomic readers are dying to see. We get a flashback to how Psychos ended up not getting away as smoothly as predicted, and her history with Fubuki is shown more clearly. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's not waste any more time and jump right into the chapter. Now, because this arc is called Psychic Sisters, we are given another beautiful shot of Fubuki, this time looking very elegant and ready to go to a fancy ball. Though she barely showed up in the previous chapter, she is about to play a much bigger role in the upcoming ones. In this chapter called Visitor, we continue where we left off, with Forte frustrated with Saitama's rude attitude and asking him to step outside. But before that confrontation can happen, Saitama slowly opens his apartment door and checks on his new pets. Well, at least one of them is a pet. The other is just Black S, pretending he can be of assistance to Saitama again. In fact, he begs to be let inside and not forgotten outside. And to be fair, we all know that it wouldn't be too out of character for Saitama to forget that he had living creatures outside his door. And as previously said, he decides that he'll be setting up some kind of doghouse after all. It's almost as if he already forgot that he said that before. But anyway, that does not matter. What's important is that Saitama has the great idea to wager on his fight with Forte. The loser has to take care of these guys, is what Saitama suggests, mainly because he's too lazy to be a good pet owner and he doesn't even want to fight. Forte steps out to check on what he would have to take care of. A dog and what is this thing? Yeah, we know how you feel, Forte. It's not an easy thing to guess, that's for sure. Right on cue, afraid to be found out by heroes not as gullible as Saitama, Black S begins his monkey noises to try and convince Forte. Upon closer inspection, grabbing Black S roughly by the antenna by the way, he asks where Saitama found something like this. And to that, blandly, Kate Baldy admits that it just followed him. Butterfly in the back, looking a bit stricken, immediately wonders if this is some kind of dangerous monster instead. To cover up that fear, Black S starts his jumping monkey routine once more, trying to appear as a harmless creature. After all, even if Saitama doesn't kill him, who's to say that one of these A-class heroes will not? Meanwhile, Black S is desperate to stay alive and worries how long he will have to pretend to be something he's not. Forte is over it though. With a confident grin, he admits that wagering on the fight will make them take it more seriously. And I'm pretty sure he means Saitama would have to stop insulting his abilities like he did before. Whatever the case, the bet is on and the rules are set. All that's left is to have Forte become a pet sitter. I mean, come on, we all know that he's not going to beat Saitama. Forte suggests they go somewhere with more open space and has a parking lot in mind for their face-off. From the massive building next to them, we can assume it is a parking lot next to the Hero Association complex, with very few vehicles around either. Chain and Toad as well as Butterfly DX stand on the sidelines to cheer on their friend, likely hoping for their own justice from Saitama's cruel words. Forte stands with his hands in his pockets while the wind whooshes past them like some kind of western clash in the desert. Saitama, interestingly, is wearing Croc-looking shoes and has his fist balled up in waiting, and so he seems to be taking it somewhat seriously, or at least by Saitama standards. Forte announces confidently that Saitama might end up getting hurt after this, hoping there won't be any hard feelings when that is the outcome. He is really out here peddling lies, okay? Honestly, it might as well be Saitama facing Moomin Rider for how much damage he is about to inflict on our hero. But then, with a shocked face and a sweat drop, it dawns on Saitama that he might end up with someone else wanting to be his disciple when he inevitably wins again. And so, he makes sure that Forte knows that he won't be taking him in and not to beg for his training. Genos is certainly more than enough. Of course, Butterfly laughs rowdily at this, clearly knowing nothing about Saitama and his feats. I guess only the higher level heroes have that privilege. Kind of like how they were made aware of Blast's secret mission. Butterfly admits that he respects Saitama's confidence if nothing else, since timid heroes are pretty worthless. Chain and Toad is slightly more reasonable, as he reveals this is his first time seeing Forte fight. But it does not mean his usage of a rhythm in battle is pointless. In fact, even first-rate martial artists do this. But then again, we all know how Saitama feels about martial arts though. He nearly gave Suiru a mental breakdown from his hot takes. But now before we get back to the parking lot brawl, be sure to subscribe to the channel with notifications on and smash that like button for some more plot armor today. Toad is not done schooling Saitama though. He warns him that dismissing this style of fighting will lead to a world of hurt, because it has been reached through a lot of experience. Okay, so maybe he's not as reasonable as we thought. Saitama has fought so many powerful creatures and people, it is hard to even keep track at this point. With all that out of the way though, Forte puts on his booming music, vibrating with the loudness of it. He starts to shift from leg to leg, building up his momentum and getting ready to strike. But something is wrong. Saitama has his eyebrow raised, noticing something behind the rhythm hero. The music is too loud though, and he cannot hear a word Saitama is saying, even when he starts pointing and yelling to get his attention through his headphones. Finally, noticing how worried Saitama is, Forte removes one side of his headphones, assuming Saitama plans to back out of their fight. But that's when Saitama shouts, "There is a car coming behind you!" But it's too late. Forte is flying through the air, whirling like a tornado, hit by a recognizable black car. Honestly, Forte has some bad luck. How often do people get hit while standing in a parking lot? These people clearly do not know how to drive properly. And who else could it be except Eyelashes and Mountain Ape? At least they seem to be a bit guilty about what happened, with Mountain Ape asking if Forte is okay. It's a bit late for that now though. As expected, the beanie-wearing hero cannot speak because he is knocked out. As other members of Fubuki's group come out to check on him, they realize it is worse than they thought. He is an A-class hero, likely far above their ranking. And all Saitama has to say about this accident is that Forte should understand how dangerous it is to listen to music while fighting. Chain and Toad is visibly shaken by that totally uncalled for comment, especially since it was a freak accident that Fubuki's group caused. Saitama, going back to his words somewhat, tells her to apologize to Forte later, when he wakes up. Fubuki seems surprised to find Saitama at the hero apartments, maybe knowing something about the association that he does not. She even says, "You don't actually live here, do you?" while holding onto her white fur coat. Saitama admits he lives there because his apartment was destroyed. Is that all? Weren't you tired of all the monsters around your place, Kate Baldy? Fubuki has no response to Saitama's statement, but we do get a good view of just how many people she has brought with her for her secret meeting. And man, she never travels with that many members. You know something big is going down. We move on to another parking lot next, but this time it is underground. A shadowy figure is meeting some businessmen who have called for his help. There is a strange, lightly colored, thick aura around the person, and he has a mask on that is frankly pretty chilling. And judging from his car, he is certainly doing well in whatever shady business he conducts. As his aura begins seeping further out of him, Fubuki finally senses it. With her eyes pointed downward, clearly in distress, it is safe to say that this masked person is a problem. Not only that, but he is also not far from them. Either way, Fubuki thinks this is perfect timing since she could use Saitama's help with her plan. She doesn't ask him though. It's more of an order. Probably because she still sees him as part of her new Fubuki group, from their time working together during the Monster Association arc. Without batting an eye, she announces, "I grant you permission to accompany us," seeing as he is a special admission of her group. Saitama's veins start to pop out of his forehead with irritation, telling her that she's full of herself as usual. At her announcement, Mountain Ape and Eyelashes couldn't believe what they had just heard. Saitama is already an A-class. But then again, why wouldn't he be? That aside, Black S isn't sure what they should do now since the loser of the fight was meant to take care of Saitama's pets, and technically, Saitama won. But Forte is still unconscious. Because of that turn of events, Saitama readily hands Rover over to Butterfly, expecting him to take responsibility since Forte is out of commission. Funnily enough, Saitama continues on by saying, "It is partially my fault for letting them tag along, so let's take turns taking care of them." In other words, Saitama is making Forte's allies also be part of the wager and take care of his pets as he dashes off to help the Fubuki group. Regardless, they get more of a sense of who Saitama is, seeing as how they have met the people who gather around him, like Fubuki and S-Class heroes. Butterfly even begins to wonder if they are the only ones out of the loop when it comes to Saitama. Without letting him know the details, Fubuki brings Saitama and her people to a secret location. They walk through a hall, standing out a lot with their large numbers, while people working in the building can't help but stare. When Saitama tries to get some more info, Fubuki says that he will see when they arrive. A sign gives a hint as to their goal. It reads, Hero Association Headquarters, Internment Facility. Once they reach the reception desk, Fubuki says that they are there to see an inmate currently being held. Calmly, the receptionist tells her that she won't be able to visit, seeing as someone is already there seeing them. Not only that, but the inmate is going to be transferred elsewhere afterwards. This causes Fubuki to panic, immediately calling for the visit to stop. This is an emergency, she says. All of her team, including the unwilling Saitama, are taken aback by her outburst. Fubuki demands that they be brought to the captive right away. Meanwhile, on floor B13, we see just who is visiting said prisoner. It is the same masked man from earlier with the frightening aura. The guard who lets him in says that she is harmless because they've got her on medication. And with that, we get the reveal of just who this in-demand inmate is. Psychos, the head of the Monster Association. She is strapped to a chair and clearly unable to move or do much beyond sleep. The masked man wastes no time before he asks about her power, wanting to confirm that she was able to fight on par with Tatsumaki, which she of course was for a short while. The men who brought in this mysterious threat seem shocked that he knows so much, since they couldn't even get records of what happened on the battlefield that day. The masked villain, yes, we're going to assume he's bad from his aura and sinister mask, okay, is glad that she was provided to them. First of all, who is us? And what right do these men have to give away people, even if they are modified? I mean, if the public knew about this, surely their faith in the Hero Association would dwindle even further. The businessmen say that is nothing, since they are short on funding. In other words, they agreed to do this unethical transaction in order to get a large sum of money from this man and whoever he represents. One of the men clarifies that all her rights have been stripped because she is now listed as a monster and no longer human. They encourage the masked man to conduct whatever experiments he wants to, seeing as she is now his specimen. Finally, the man reveals his organization, named Tsukuyomi, and how their group will be able to accomplish so much by having her as a sample. At that, Psychos begins to slowly wake up from her medications. She overheard the name of the organization, and it is evident that just hearing it brings back traumatic memories as her eyes begin to bulge. She immediately goes into full fight mode, blasting the room with psychic powers. The masked man holds it back with a single hand, but this mask does fly off his face. Behind him, the three men are blown back but mostly unharmed. They can't believe even with so much medication, she is still this powerful. But the Tsukuyomi member points two fingers at her, seeming to shock her with his power. She screams and begins to drool and cry, tormented by whatever ability he has used. As he draws his fingers back like a gun, her head falls back against her chair and she is no longer able to speak or move. Without much worry, he says, "This would all be for naught if we ended up damaging your precious brain." Talk about a terrifying prospect for Psychos. As he cups her head in his hand, speaking as if she is suddenly precious, he reveals that Psychos has something within her called the third eye. And there is a possibility they could use that to see into the future if they can find the secret locked inside the ability. One of the businessmen speaks up, offering facilities for the mysterious person if they want to torture the information out of Psychos. Still holding on to her, the person, with a massive scar across their forehead, admits that they will be doing a craniotomy on her back at the lab. 1. This person looks like they've already had some kind of brain surgery done on themselves, which could possibly explain why they are so powerful. And 2, Psychos is in a lot of trouble if they do take her away, because she is basically just going to become an organ donor for Tsukuyomi's plan to find a way to see into the future. No wonder Fubuki is so adamant about getting to Psychos first. Oh, and side note, this person is somehow just as scary without the mask as they are with it. Yikes. We jump back to Fubuki and her posse, plus Saitama of course, trying to make their way to Psychos before anything bad happens. We see them all riding in a gigantic elevator made for transporting much bigger beings than people. It's likely what they use to hold any captured monsters that would otherwise be impossible to carry. Fubuki remains deep in thought, remembering the event of the war against the Monster Association. Psychos is shown hiding behind the rubble, panting from trying to get away. Nearby, people discuss how Garo has escaped and they need to find him. This means that it happened at the exact same time that Saitama allowed Garo to flee and he jumped into the sky. While they were all occupied with the human monster, Fubuki had tracked down Psychos, who was too injured to make her own escape. Upon seeing her, Psychos reveals that she knows all about Fubuki. A bit too much for her to have just gathered some intel. In fact, she knows that Fubuki is the president of the Society for Supernatural Research, something we have never heard of before. Meanwhile, Fubuki just responds by saying, "It's been a while, former Vice President Psychos of the Third Eye." From the sound of it, they were in the same group but had vastly different goals in mind. And considering where they ended up, one a hero and the other a monster hybrid, they have certainly taken different paths towards gaining power. With a darkness around Fubuki that we hardly ever see, she warns Psychos that it is over, and that she should stop using her powers because it could endanger her life with how beat up she is. But of course, Psychos is just as hard-headed as the Psychic Sisters and attempts to fight back while standing up, and using some colorful language to describe Fubuki, who doesn't stop getting in her way. And if one flashback wasn't enough, here is another. It is flashback Inception. Psychos is shown in a student outfit, looking more innocent, but on the verge of turning evil. She reveals that back when she was 17, Fubuki was worried about her powers surpassing hers, so Fubuki seals Psychos' powers away. But hold on a minute! Now this is a very interesting panel indeed, as if you look closely, Fubuki here is leaning into Psychos while gently touching her leg beneath the shaded tree. It's a very shoujo-esque scene that seems to imply that a kiss was shared. A deduction only further backed by the fact that immediately afterwards, Psychos touches her own lips while blushing profusely. Very interesting. But now back to Psychos during the events of the Monster Association aftermath. She is heavily injured and begins to growl and froth at the mouth with how much she cannot stand Fubuki and her long-time meddling. After all, given what we saw, her first kiss was ultimately just an exploitative way to limit her future potential. With Fubuki's hidden face, she agrees that she was a self-centered person. And I mean, Saitama would argue that she still is, but anyway, Fubuki explains that Psychos' plan to exterminate humanity caused a lot of uproar with people around her, and they accuse Psychos of having lost her mind. Fubuki admits that she did not care so much that the plan would involve getting rid of so many people, but rather that she would have no one to flaunt her impressive powers to once she passed Tatsumaki's level. And quite frankly, that is a terrible reason to want to keep humans alive, but at least it would ensure not so many people would die. I'm not sure how we should take this. But going even further, Fubuki thought that Psychos was trying to prevent her from realizing her own dream. She is trying to take the losers away from me. So self-centered. Psychos is my enemy. Seeing these thoughts, it is obvious that Tatsumaki's twisted view of the world, with power being the only necessity, had rubbed off too much on Fubuki. Considering they had such different lives, with Tatsumaki protecting Fubuki from any harm or prejudice, why did Fubuki feel the need to be the strongest? Had Tatsumaki treated her own sister so poorly that she turned into a monster like that, only striving to become the best? Either way, Psychos cannot forgive Fubuki for what she had done in the past, and so she prepares to crush her, literally with spiked rocks that she raises above her head with one hand. She tells Fubuki, "I am nothing like I was in our school days," because she will not hesitate to kill her classmate this time. With rocks and debris flying everywhere, the Fubuki group members look on in shock, confused as to what is happening. They worry that their leader has been seriously injured in the clash. But Fubuki is mostly uninjured, floating away as Psychos tries to hit her with any and all pieces of debris nearby. And it ends there. But you know, considering that Fubuki is fine now and that Psychos is strapped to a chair being sold for inhumane experiments, it is pretty safe to assume that Fubuki wins the fight. But that's just the beginning of the intense battles to come. There are more reveals and high-stakes fights on the way. And no, we do not mean a rematch between Forte and Saitama. With that said, did you enjoy the chapter? Do you think they will arrive in time to save Psychos from a terrible fate? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.